CO magnifier text-to-speech converter Ki Cham Kim, Choi Cham Shik, is a young fellow living in destitution in the ghettos of an anonymous South Korean city with his family, father Ki Taek Kim, Melody Kang Ho, mother Chung Suk Kim, Jang Hai Jin, and sister Ki Young, Park So Dam. The family lives in a nursery unit where they battle finding a Wi-Fi sign to slip into to gain admittance to the web to sit in front of the television, get treated on, and need to watch men peeing in the back street outside their home. They earn enough to get by doing modest errands, for example, collapsing pizza boxes, and, surprisingly, then, at that point, get condemned by the pizza representatives for wrecking the cases. Ki Cham's rich companion Min Hyuk visits the family, giving him a gift, a stone that should bring the individuals who have it riches and flourishing. He then tells Ki Cham that he has been mentoring the high school girl of an extremely well-off family. He is passing on to concentrate abroad, however is infatuated with the girl, and knows that any of the other college young men would take her away. He needs Ki Cham to be her coach, realizing he will look after her so Min Hyuk can propose to her once she graduates secondary school. Ki Cham realizes he isn't qualified since he isn't in school, yet Min Hyuk vows to vouch for him. Thus he concurs and has Ki Young produce qualifications for him to take to his meeting. Ki Cham interviews at the exceptionally rich Park family where he meets Mr. Park, Lee Sun Kyun, his silly spouse Mrs. Park, Choi Yo Jeng, and their youngsters, teen little girl Da Hai and youthful child Da Melody. Ki Cham acknowledges he really wants to play with Da Hai to land the position, and he does. Mrs. Park pays him an extreme measure of cash and notices they need a craftsmanship mentor for Da Melody. Da Chun had a horrible occurrence where he saw a and Kwak, Phantom and Kwak, in the house and had a seizure and has been requiring assist with his craft. Ki Cham acquaints them with Ki Young, who fashions records for her and goes by and Kwak, Jessica, and Kwak. And she also starts bringing in cash at a mind-blowing rate. At the point when the recreation area's limo driver brings her back home, Ki Young passes on her clothing in the vehicle to get him terminated. She then, at that point, proposes her and Kwak, Uncle and Kwak, as the new driver, who is truly Ki Taek. The last position is that of the servant, Moon Kwang, Lee Jung Yoon. She has worked for the home since before the recreation area family resided there. She worked for the past proprietor, an unpredictable draftsman. To get her terminated, the Kims exploit her sensitivity to peaches, making her have unfavorably susceptible responses. They then persuade Mrs. Park that she is truly infectiously sick and can't be around their child. She leaves, crushed, and Mrs. Kim is given the work, tricking the recreation area family into employing the whole Kim family. The Kim family partakes in their enormous increment of pay, and when the recreation area family chooses to pass on to go setting up camp for Da Melody's birthday end of the week, they make a move to remain in the gigantic park house for the end of the week. They go through the night drinking and eating, and ruining the spot when the doorbell rings. It's Moon Kwang. She guarantees she was terminated so rapidly she left without having the option to get something and simply needs it back. Mrs. Kim hesitantly gives her access, and Moon Kwang runs into the cellar and starts shouting, opening a mysterious entry behind some racks. She goes to her significant other, Jian Sai, Park Myung-hoon, who has covertly been living in the fortification since the past proprietor moved out to stow away from predatory lenders. She gives him food while Mrs. Kim on searches with sickening apprehension. She tells Moon Kwang she wants to leave, and as Moon Kwang implores her to allow him to remain, the remainder of the Kim family, who had been snooping, tumbles off the steps and into view, and They call one another and quat, father, and quat, and so forth, which Moon Kwang films on her telephone. Understanding the con the family has pulled, she takes steps to send it to the recreation area. Family and utilizations that so she and her better half can compel the Kim family to do their offering. The Kim family figures out how to get the high ground on them, getting them into the mystery dugout, yet the recreation area family calls, they've dropped their setting up camp excursion because of downpour and will be home shortly. The Kims scramble, attempting to tidy up as much wreck as possible, keeping the other two in the storm cellar. They figure out how to do a sufficient work that the remainder of the family can stow away while Mrs. Kim gives the Parks their supper. When Moon Kwang breaks out and runs higher up, Mrs. Kim pushes her back down the steps, where she hits her head and is seriously injured. Moon Kwang and Jeon Sai are secured in the shelter. Mr. and Mrs. Park wind up dozing in the lounge room to watch out for Da Chun, who is exploring nature out in the terrace, constraining the Kims to remain under the table, frozen the entire evening, even as the Parks grumble about Mr. Kim's smell, and afterward, have intercourse. In the end, ridiculously late, they can escape. They get back to find their loft totally overflowed with downpour and sewage. Ki Charm takes the stone, and the family dozes in a haven for the evening. The following day, Mrs. Park chooses to arrange an unrehearsed party for Da Chun. The Kim family, in their jobs as help, are welcomed and need to imagine that they don't realize that there are two individuals secured in a fortification under the house. Ki Charm brings the stone down into the shelter, where Moon Kwang has passed on and is trapped by Jeon Sai, who clubs him in the head with the stone. He then, at that point, enters the party, where he wounds Ki Young in the chest. The party detonates into frightfulness, and Da Chun has a seizure. Jeon Sai was the and Kwak, Phantom and Kwak, he had found in the house earlier. Mr. Park shouts at his driver, Mr. Kim, who is attempting to stop Ki Young's dying, for the vehicle keys to take his child to the medical clinic, and he tosses them to him. They land under Jeon Sai, who is battling with Mrs. Kim. She figures out how to kill him by cutting him with a meat stick. Mr. Park gets the keys yet communicates sickens at Jeon Sai's smell. This triggers Mr. Kim, who snaps and cuts Mr. Park, killing him. Mrs. Park swoons as Mr. Kim escapes. Ki Charm awakens in the medical clinic, where he had been in a trance-like state for a really long time. He figures out that Ki Young has passed on, and he and Mrs. Kim are condemned to probation. There has been no indication of Mr. Kim, despite the fact that the police have been looking for him for Mr. Park's homicide all over. Ki Charm leaves the stone in a stream and notices the previous Park house where he sees the lights flashing. Ki Charm deciphers the gleaming from Morse code, and learns Mr. Kim is controlling them from inside the shelter, where he is currently residing, sneaking higher up for food from the new proprietors. Ki Charm composes his dad a letter back, settling that sometime he will become rich enough that he can purchase the house and their family can be brought together.